Hello and welcome back to the Nasty Metal Production channel here with YouTube, and welcome to another album of the week. This is episode number 130, folks, and for episode number 130, since we're into this many episodes now, the album for today's topic, I think I don't know if there was any other album that I think that would be good enough to be used as the topic for episode number 130 again. And today it is a classic album. It is the fourth classic album from Saxon. It is Denim and Leather. Again, 3 classic albums in a row at this point. Again, originally released on September 25th of 1981, and since we are on September 25th, that means the album has already reached its 40th anniversary. And anyways, let's let me focus on just Denim and Leather and just try and really just look more back on the album, and also my personal experience just really spending my time with this album in general. So let me get into it. So since this album comes off the heels of 2 very classic and successful albums released in 1980, that being Wheels of Steel and Strong Arm of the Law, which again, both those 2 albums are, again, great freaking albums, but they were definitely the most successful that the band had released, and of course also coming off the heels of performing at the very first Monsters of Rock, which had a great lineup with like Judas Priest, April Wine, Scorpions, and Rainbow, and then of course Riot. So what a classic lineup there. Of course there was a band called Touch there. Anyways, that was your lineup, and Saxon were a part of it. So coming off the heels of being a part of the first Monsters of Rock and releasing two successful albums, obviously going in to Denim and Leather, or at least recording basically a follow-up to it the following year, was obviously going to be a little, was either at times was probably going to be seen as kind of difficult, or it was going to be just as more of a very interesting and at times maybe exciting experience basically for them. So let's definitely just get into it. Since in 1981, it's not really stated on when or month that the recording process took place, but the only thing is they were booked at least for 2 studios for 2 different countries or whatnot, basically, because one of the studios is Aquarius Studios in Geneva, Switzerland, and of course the second studio that they recorded Denim and Leather at was Polar Studios in Stockholm, Sweden. So they were booked for 2 studios to basically for the recording process for this album, and along with them was new producer Nigel Thomas to help produce the album, since they didn't want to keep Pete Hinton, who had produced the previous 2 albums, also best known for doing production work for the band Picture, again also Witchfinder General. So they didn't want to use Pete Hinton again, so that's who they go with. And the album, of course, is recorded and then finally gets released through Carrera Records, and at times maybe even EMI or Capitol, whoever that was in charge of basically releasing the album also within the United States and whatnot. It gets released on September 25th, 1981, maybe even October, I think, maybe for the United States. Who knows? Even though there is at least different year dates or month dates for this album across from Wikipedia to Metal Archives, because on Wikipedia it states that this album was released on September 25th. That's probably for maybe the UK release of it, but it did apparently got released on October 5th in 1981 according to Metal Archives, but that might have been for the other labels that were in basically that where this album was licensed to release it outside of Europe and whatnot, maybe. I don't know. That's the way I'm taking it, I guess. Because I don't think October 5th is really the definitive date. It's obviously September 25th is. So that's why I'm recording this on the day that this album's anniversary is. Because this seems to be the correct date that this album was released on. So there we go. Alright, so obviously it gets released, and and is launched into the public en masse, and it erupts. Obviously, it erupts. A great fucking response, obviously, from both the audience and maybe even critics, depending. So it is already deemed a instant classic within its audience. So let's definitely just get straight into Denim and Leather here. We've got at least about 9 songs through this album, and it all clocks in at 37 minutes and 56 seconds. So these 9 songs are already kicking off with a pretty much became an instant live staple for them. It is like one of the it is an anthem along with the final track and the title track. Basically, it is all it contains 2 of their most crowd favorite tracks. Basically, the songs that definitely will get the crowd singing along with them. Again, that's why I'm saying crowd favorites, and it's got plenty of crowd favorites. Again, from Princess of the Night here to Never Surrender. Other tracks like Out of Control, Rough and Ready, Play It Loud. Of course, the classic And the Band's Played On, which was pretty much a kind of a song based around their experience of playing at the very first Monsters of Rock festival. So it's inspired by that event. Then, of course, going to Midnight Rider, and then Fire in the Sky, then finally ending with the eponymous self-titled track, basically the title track of the album. And again, a track that is pretty much considered an anthem for Saxon at this point, because it's a track that is always going to get played at pretty much most of their shows. It is their almost Saxon's stadium anthem. A crowd anthem. It's the song that definitely gets the crowd to sing with them. It's that's basically what Denim and Leather is. And again, just like with Living After Midnight or Breaking the Law from Judas Priest, Denim and Leather and Princess of the Night, I think, are those 2 songs basically. Again, what Living After Midnight and Breaking the Law are to Judas Priest is what Princess of the Night and Denim and Leather are to Saxon. These are the 2 most iconic songs from Saxon, and they never really they never really quit playing these songs. They are just crowd favorites. But there's other sort of songs on this album that became easily at times crowd favorites too, like Never Surrender. Midnight Rider, I think, kind of became one a little bit there too. Even Fire in the Sky kind of also turned into one too. And The Band's Played On is another sort of, again, iconic song for them, due to the fact that it is, again, written after their experience of playing at the very first Monsters of Rock festival in like August of 1980. So it is just a classic track. And again, that you can say that the rest for most of it is a classic album. The one thing that I have to say that is different compared to the previous 2 is that this one is probably the least most heaviest, or at times the most, I guess, more serious album of the previous 2 albums. Because this one, I think what Martin Poffop kind of stated is that this one's got more of a arena rock feel to the sound. This was basically what he basically stated is that this is their stadium rock anthem or album, basically their arena rock album, because it is more. It almost has more of an AC/DC kind of feel to the album in a way. It feels more AC/DC inspired than compared to the more straight up, really more core sort of new wave or British metal feel of at least maybe the previous 2 albums, especially compared to the very first album. It just has more of a classic hard rock anthem to it, more boogie-like, basically. It's more less emphasis on really heavy riffs, but more about on straight up, more working class, blue collar chords, basically. Just again, the kind of AC/DC style boogie formula, basically. Just again, bluesier in some cases too. This one just has more of a straightforward rock style to the album. That's definitely heard with songs like either, again, like Never Surrender, Out of Control, Rough and Ready, Play It Loud, Midnight Rider, and of course even the title track itself are more than you can feel that they've got more of a classic, almost arena hard rock tone to these songs than really compared to the previous two albums. Even though they always flirted with that, this one just comes off more like that, and that's due to just the overall tone and the of the songs. Not necessarily meaning that they are straight up more hard rock style songs. It's just that it's just have that more almost structure to them, because they come off more and are more, I wouldn't say lightweight, I guess a little happier in some cases too, which again, not to really say anything that it's a bad thing. It just they come off more like that. Again, the best way to really, again, to describe the album is it is more straight up arena rock ready compared to probably the previous two albums in many ways. But it's not like that. It's without its really heavy or more core sort of serious moments. I mean, you got Prince of the Night again, which while kind of has that sort of, again, AC/DC kind of boogie going on there a little bit, still you also have almost its more dual guitar like guitar riffing here and there towards the songs. Again, the twin guitar attack of some of this, along with the song like And the Band's Played On, which is probably one of the more heavier songs off the album besides Fire in the Sky, which really pushes the territory towards speed metal. Again, very classic though, of the a very more typical, in line with the new wave of British heavy metal movement a bit ago. You know, in a way, it's still in line with that, due to the fact that it's a very fast speed metal song along the lines of like a Machine Gun or 20,000 Feet. Even the song Heavy Metal Thunder, you know, it's in that sort of same line and that same category, but it still comes across a little, again, a slightly less heavy at times too, and it's all due to at least the production of Nigel Thomas. Tends to really give this album a more, his production of this album is more lighter feel compared. It comes off almost feather-like in a way. It's like it's less, just it feels cleaner compared to the previous two. And that's why it also gives the album, I think, a less sort of heavy feel too. And the songs are still played, still have a very heaviness to them, just that not in the way of, again, probably more of an AC/DC style heaviness than a Judas Priest or Motorhead like heaviness, or Tigers of Pantang, you know, something like you'd expect the production work of maybe like a Chris Sangarides or Martin Birch, where everything really has a heavy feel. It feels less like that, like you kind of got with the previous two albums, which were definitely due to Pete Hinton's production. He made everything sound pretty heavy, but Nigel Thomas made things a little more cleaner and very more, I guess, more acceptable, I guess, within the audience, for those as kind of a gateway album to see if you might be interested, or maybe if Saxon is actually right for you. This is almost that kind of album, and that's also due to the production and somewhat of the writing and the playing on the album and the structuring. It's got more of a slightly more commercial feel going on, but yet it still comes off still pretty at least rocking and heavy at the same time, but not being that heavy compared to the previous two. You get the whole point, basically. You get the point. So it just has a very overall different feel compared to the previous two, but it still sounds like Saxon. It still has a bit of that formula going on. So that's the best way I can really describe it. But again, it's up a lot of great classic songs that I love. I mean, I do love the fact that it comes off more hook Latin too, because that's the one thing, is the most of the songs on this album, they all got a hook to them. They are just a lot of hooks. I mean, Princes of the Night, Never Surrender, which is probably the first song I really latched onto off this one. It was probably for the longest time, my most personal favorite song off of this album. But again, that one also is a freaking heavier number off this one. But songs like Out of Control, which is more melodic, but it still has just a nice hook to it. Again, one of my other personal favorite songs off this one, along with me like Rough and Ready and Play It Loud, are also pretty good freaking tracks. Again, they all got a hook around them. That's the thing, though, that I will say this compared to probably the previous two, is I love the previous two. I love Strong on the Law and Wheels of Steel. Wheels of Steel was the first Saxon album I ever really bought. And then Strong on the Law was the second. So those two albums are completely dear to my heart, and they are definitely my two most personal favorites. But this one is definitely right up there. But that's also the fact that over time, every of these songs just, I ended up just at times maybe humming along to these songs, or I'll just, bop along in a way. It's like, and after being done listening, I'll still, in my mind, would be singing a lot of the choruses of these songs will end up popping up in my head. Because, again, it's because of the fact that they all got a really tight, hooky chorus to them. Again, the hooks. This album has plenty of hooks. It's why you remember most of the songs off this album. Because again, that's the thing. You remember everything about this album. It's all built around strong, hooky, catchy choruses. And that's kind of the thing why it comes off the fact that this is probably more of an arena rock style album compared to the other two. Because again, it's mostly built around the whole concept of very catchy, hooky choruses that many people are going to remember for a long time. That's why it's almost considered to be, and also kind of the album to get people who may not be familiar with Saxon, that might like bands like AC/DC or maybe other sort of classic rock bands from the 1970s that they liked. That kind of gateway album that kind of gets somebody who is mostly used to the likes of, again, like I just mentioned a bit ago, and see if it's for them. This is the kind of album you kind of want to also give them. You don't want to give them in the later Saxon albums where they got a little heavier, or even the more really poppier or more slicker sounding Saxon album that came out within the mid to late 80s. You don't kind of want to do that. Instead, you want to give it something that might be really right for them, and I think Denim and Leather was kind of that kind of album. The album that kind of pushes them into more of the mainstream territory, that kind of gets more eyes onto them than like the other previous two or three, basically, from them. So that's kind of where the overall feel is, but at the same time, they do it in a way where it's all great and it's all pulled off in that sort of manner. So that's kind of the way that the album really comes off. It is the gateway Saxon album. The easiest Saxon album to get into, basically. And again, that's not a bad thing. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think it definitely, it gives the album really its overall different feel. And again, I just love this album. The first time I actually really heard this album from start to finish was when I bought that 10 box set, or mini LP box set that was released back in 2014 from Parlophone. Which again, it's got the debut album and at least everything up to about Destiny. And I got that set from Rasputin, and Denim and Leather was the first disc I actually put on because of it's one of the few albums I've been wanting to get a hold of for a long time and add it to my collection. And when I got that set, I finally did, and I wanted to listen to it from basically, again, the first thing I got in the car. That was the first disc I popped in, and somehow I just loved it from the get-go. I didn't really, I knew I was going to like the album. It's just that there's somehow, again, because of the overall really hooky, catchy feel of the album, it at times it threw me off, but at the same time, I really warmed up a lot more to it, where I ended up really considering this album one of my other favorite albums of at least the classic Saxon era of this band, the classic era. And I just love it from start to finish. There really isn't a song here that I actually consider to be really bad or anything. I don't think there really isn't a song that I find to be that fucking weak. The songs I probably would have thought that might have been weak would have been maybe songs like Rough and Ready or Play It Loud. But the thing is, over time, I've come to really like those two songs. But still, those might be the slightly weaker moments of the album for me, because again, I love the first. I think it starts out with three instant classics for me. But then from in the side 2, basically the second half of the album, and the band's played on Midnight Rider, Fire in the Sky, and then the title track. My God, it definitely it still felt like very much just top to bottom strong, just strong top to bottom. So there really isn't a moment on here that I find to be weak. I know a lot of people are gonna have different opinions, and are gonna definitely point out songs that they find to be a lot more weaker and whatnot. They'll have more, but personally, me, I enjoy the sound from start to finish. And again, I can't find really a moment on here that I actually dislike. It's definitely a different feel, more melodic compared to the first two, but it's not really anywhere compared to Crusader, you know, or in the times, especially like fucking Rock the Nation, I think it was called, and then Destiny. It's nowhere near those, which are probably the weakest crop of albums, I would say, from Saxon, personally for me. So there's still a little bit of an edge to this album. So that's about it. Again, I can go on and on. It's a classic album. It's an album I've spent years listening to, and it's really one of my other go-to Saxon albums for at least whenever I want to hear the classic period of Saxon. It is one of the those go-to albums. That's about it, though. I can say I can go on and on, but right now I think that that's the best I've gotten. I got pretty much all that I really wanted to say about the album. So there we go. That's about it. Again, this album has reached its 40th anniversary, and so for those who have grew up with this album, that spent years listening to this album, to all of those, and if you're, I mean, depending on if you were there when it came out, or you there, or you weren't, you know, yada yada yada. If you got any sort of memories about this album, or just any feelings, whether it be positive or negative, you can leave them in the comments section below. But if you've never really checked out Saxon and you're looking for an album that maybe that might be easy for you to get into, then you're not really looking for something that's heavy, but yet still that might test that waters and see if it will do something for you. This isn't a bad album to really check out. Again, a lot of people who are really into Saxon that love the earlier period might state this as one of your go-to albums to want to be, or at least a go-to first album to want to check out from Saxon. Me personally, I would probably say Strong of the Law, and then maybe Wheels of Steel, and then Denim and Leather, then third. That's where I might go from there. That would be my selection of listings if you wanted to really start. If you want to just, for you to get into Saxon, you want to begin with any of the trinity of classics, Strong of the Law would be the first one I would gear you towards. Basically, I would would move you towards then Denim and Leather. But that's not to say that I think that Denim and Leather is a bad album. But the thing is, still, if you're looking for something that's not nearly that heavy, this is not a bad album to get into, and I think would be a good enough album to do the job. Maybe that's all up to you, basically. But if you're looking for at least a good Saxon album to start off with, it's not a bad, basically, it's not a bad start, is what I'm trying to get at. It's not a bad start. So there you go. There it is. Hope all of you enjoyed. This is Heavy Thrash. I'm out, and I'll see you all later. Take care, everyone.